Have you seen this mini doc? You won't regret it.
A day and a half ago, this thing was the size.
Cultivating gourmet and medicinal mushrooms.
There's been stories of toxic waste cleanup by mushrooms.
Well, this is interesting. I kind of do want to watch this. It's 12 minutes. Looks really pretty. All right. Let's give it a dance. Let's give it a spin. I'm a mushroom guy. Let's watch the mushroom doc.
A day and a half ago, this thing was the size of the tip of my pinky. There's been stories of toxic waste cleanup by mushrooms. Without mushrooms,
very
we
quiet.
would be overrun with waste. There would not be any life on Earth. Ganoderma lucidum sinci-stricto. It's known as the mushroom of immortality. They're antiviral, antibacterial. It's been shown to shrink and terminate tumor growth. Yeah, we do about 180 bags per cycle, and we do that 3 times a week. Yeah, this used to be done in my house. Yeah, we have some shiitake mushrooms right here that are ready to go.
This dude is growing mushrooms.
These guys can save our world and make our environment that much better to live in.
Cultivating fungi and mushrooms is like a balance between science and art. I'm gonna be taking a look inside of my, this is the spawn incubation / media room. And I'm just gonna select out some cultures for today and take a look at some of my spawn. Today, I will be taking little pieces of tissue from these plates and dropping them into nutrient media broths to basically expand the mycelium. Yeah, my name is Michael Crow and I own Southwest Mushrooms. Here we cultivate a wide variety of gourmet and medicinal mushrooms.
This is a mushroom guy.
Yeah, we just dropped a couple chunks of mycelium tissue of cordyceps. Mycology is the study of fungi and basically the growth of
Fungi.
People don't realize that there is such a wide array of different.
I also didn't realize it was pronounced fungi.
Spores rather than seed. 2 compatible spores will mate and form mycelium. The mycelium starts out, we plant it on a petri dish, and from there we transfer healthy sectors of mycelium into...
Dude, his magic mushrooms are probably fucking wild.
Here we have organic wheat berries that we use. From there, mycelium will spread and devour whatever food source that it's working with. Full colonization occurs. You'll see a big, nice, healthy bag of white mycelium. This can get broken up and utilized to inoculate anywhere from 20 to 30 of our production blocks. Without good spawn, you don't have mushrooms. A lot of people that will try to get into growing mushrooms because they've grown like a lot of plants before think that, you know, it'll be basically like kind of similar.
Wrong.
But it's definitely totally different. You're germinating spores on petri dishes, you're growing out the mycelium, you're doing transfers into like sterilized grain substrates as opposed to soils. Yeah, this is our production area. This is where our substrate gets made. We use a blend of oak hardwood sawdust plus added supplements like organic wheat bran and certain seed hulls to basically formulate our substrate to get the maximum efficiency from our mushrooms. Bags are filled up to approximately 10 to 20.
This is a mushroom guru.
The sterilization area where the substrate will be sterilized for a prolonged period of time to make sure we kill off any microorganisms or competitor molds or fungi. Nothing's needed, it's all sterile, so you don't need to use any kind of like pesticides or any kind of fertilizers or additives. You have to really take a lot of care into making sure that you're only growing the fungi that you desire. This is the sterilization room. This is where we sterilize all of our substrate. In here we can sterilize up to 1,600 pounds of fresh substrate at a time. And basically steam comes through and sterilizes at a high temperature, about 212 degrees. If it's not sterilized properly, you'll take it in to inoculate and you'll run into a lot of contamination problems and molds outgrowing your mycelium. We have our spawn right here. This is a California reishi. So we'll take our spawn and just kind of break it up, separate each individual grain, and allow that to become a vehicle for our mycelium. So I'll take a scalpel and then I'll heat sterilize it The HEPA filter right here is basically providing us just a clean workspace to perform our inoculations. So we're getting a stream of sterile
This
air.
is crazy.
It's eyeballed. I'm pretty good at eyeballing it, so that's what I do. So yeah, the bag's placed in front of the flow hood, inflated with a little bit of that sterile air, and then sealed. All right, so now our bag's inoculated. And then we're just gonna wanna shake it up. All right, that bag's done. People think that all mushrooms are grown in the dark, on manure. We have wood-loving mushrooms, mushrooms that can grow on insects, and mycorrhizal species of mushrooms that can connect with like different plants. This area is our shiitake incubation.
Oh my God.
It generally takes 8 weeks before we can get it into the fruiting room. We can see the mushrooms at this stage beginning to like popcorn. As the mushroom begins to mature, you let the blocks ripen and they begin to turn brown. And this is a block that's ready to go into our fruiting room. It's ripe and ready. Yeah, generally a lot of new growers will mistake the brown for contamination, but that's actually just the mycelium ripening and getting ready to produce a good crop of mushrooms. And yeah, over here we have some freshly inoculated blocks. We can see the mycelium starting to jump off from the grain that it was inoculated with and looking for sawdust to basically break down and utilize as a food source. In nature, you'd find oyster mushrooms growing off of the sides of trees. So here we kind of try to simulate that way of growth with this block. Inside is oak hardwood sawdust, and the bag kind of acts as an artificial bark, tree bark. So when we give it an incision, it kind of just acts as in nature when the mycelium starts poking out at the right points.
No shot.
Right O2 levels that sends mushrooms out. Once it completely devours all of its food source, the mycelium signals to produce mushrooms. Basically,
Gordon Ramsay walks in. What the fuck is this? You're serving rotten food.
within a few days, you'll start to see a bunch of little baby mushrooms forming all over the block. Usually they'll have like a stem and a cap. Underneath the cap will be the gills, and the gills are responsible for like producing all the spores that the mushroom will utilize to continue the life cycle. We grow mushrooms that in nature you'd find them growing right in the forest, right off of the sides of different trees. So we try to give these mushrooms a little bit of light stimulation, kind of just similar to what you'd get in like a shaded part of the forest. What we do is as our blocks are ready to go in the grow room, we slap our blocks.
He slapped it.
Hands to basically stimulate the tree falling in nature to shock the mycelium into growing.
What? Okay. This mycelium is kinky as hell, dude.
Once the tree or branch would hit the floor, the mycelium would be shocked into producing the mushrooms because it's basically thinking that its life cycle is coming to an end. That's what mushrooms do. They're basically nature's like grand decomposers. Their job is to break things down and turn it into organic.
Oh my God, look at that.
By the environment. There's been stories of toxic waste cleanup by mushrooms, mushrooms being able to break down oils, kind of like the immune system for the planet. Also plastics in the environment. Without mushrooms, we would be overrun with waste. Basically, there would not be any life on Earth. Mushrooms are very crucial to the environment and ecosystem. I started when I was about 15. I just got interested in mushrooms, picked up a couple books, and was just really fascinated by the whole process, how something can just start from spores, something that we really can't see with the naked eye, into just being able to devour things at such a fast rate and produce these mushrooms. And by the time I was 16, I was growing mushrooms as a hobby and became really hooked on the process. So I started this business after
Verometrics, thank you so much for the 5 months.
Out my 401k, so I wanted to continue working with mushrooms as for life, I guess, and kind of make it a career path. So and I'll just harvest the mushrooms just by simply cutting as close to the base of the block as possible. And then from there we can go ahead and pack everything in the next warehouse and get everything to the desired weights. Creminis and button mushrooms and portobellos, those are secondary decomposing mushrooms, so Those mushrooms desire like manure or compost-based substrates. You wouldn't want to keep that stuff under the same roof just because you don't want any kind of cross-contamination getting into your grows. So yeah, we're just specializing in wood-loving species, so species that basically decompose hardwood in nature. You'll find them growing off like fresh trees or basically recently fallen trees. And those strains are like shiitake, oyster mushrooms, more of the medicinal species such as reishi, turkey tail, lion's mane. You'll find maitake growing on oak or in certain hardwoods. Also, the medicinal benefits.
This dude knows
are far
shrooms.
greater than what you'd find in like a portobello or camini mushroom. These are the mushrooms that contain those anti-cancer, anti-tumor benefits, those immunomodulating, immune system enhancing benefits. They're antiviral, antibacterial. Like reishi specifically is used in like chemotherapy and cancer treatments. It's been shown to shrink and terminate tumor growth. A lot of people that have compromised immune systems are able to utilize certain mushrooms, like shiitake, for instance, has been shown to dramatically increase like production of necessary T helper cells to help fight off infection and keep your body safe. This is called Ganoderma sicile. This is a reishi species from Palmer Woods near Michigan. And this mushroom is mainly used for the medicinal benefits. We can take it and brew it into a tea or make tinctures out of it and utilize it for the health properties. A lot of mushrooms have their own unique like health benefits that you can only get from that mushroom.
How much of this is true? You know, I don't know enough about mushrooms, but dude, after what psilocybin did for me, I'm a mushroom believer, dude. I'm willing to at least give it a try.
Used by Eastern medicine for about 4,000 years. Shiitake, for instance, produces a polysaccharide called lentinin. That's something that you can only get from shiitake. Oyster mushrooms produce a compound called lovastatin, which naturally reduces blood pressure. Lion's mane produces haricinols and erinacines, which is able to stimulate nerve growth factor in the brain. Well, here's our lion's mane, also called Hericium erinaceus. It is a wonderful teeth fungi. The mushroom is a medicinal mushroom as well as a culinary delight. It's known for the fact that it can enhance cognitive function, boost your memory, basically enabling people to recover
I'm about to hit that lion's mane hard, bro.
from traumatic brain injuries, helping people deal with Alzheimer's, dementia. We got some regulars out there that love our lion's mane powder and all of our products, really. It just started with like the farmers markets and everybody just being really amazed by our quality of mushrooms. And from there, like chefs started asking us about mushrooms, so we started dealing with chefs.
Yeah, dude, I wish Deborah had had some lion's mane, dude.
And then now our mushrooms are making it to grocery stores and restaurants all over the state. The reishi is definitely an intensive harvest. So we'll just cut each antler off at the base of the block. It's kind of like a forest of reishi down there. But patience and time. And then there we have the cut
damn.
there. And we have a little bit of sawdust attached, so I'll just trim this off. It shows that it really breaks down the substrate into almost a pulp-like matter, ready to begin composting into soil. Yeah, this is the most aggressive reishi that we have. Cultivating fungi and mushrooms is like a balance between science and art. One, you got to understand the science of it, and two, the art of it is basically being able to execute your crop the right way. If you have a passion and you want to turn it into a business, then don't let anything stop you.
Bro, that was the truest thing at the end he said right there. Become an expert like this dude is in mushrooms, and you can make that money, bro. Damn. My man was the mushroom Jesus. What channel is this? Paragraphic? That was good. Okay, wait a minute. Rethink bread, real artisanal sourdough. Hold on.
And this one is ready. We got more ready to go.
What? Okay, wait.
And this one is ready. We got more bread ready to go.
Oh,
The problem starts with wheat as a crop and looking at how it's grown, looking at how it's being processed all the way to the final loaf.
see all the shine.
Even buying the whole wheat bread at the grocery store, you're not really getting the same product that we're making here.
It is totally okay to pop the big bubbles if that gives you a little bit of joy in your day.
You don't really want high fructose corn syrup in bread ever. You see that on a label, run away.
We're just learning and also learning to respect the earth around us.
These are so pretty.
Endless with what you can do with it. We're just trying to make it the way we like it, really.
The artisan rustic bread is just flour, water, and salt, 3 ingredients.
People are buying sourdough at the grocery store, and what they're buying is something that's called sourdough, but is a completely different product in its entire makeup. It's just regular bread.
Dude, I gotta say, and I've said this before on stream. This is gonna sound like a weird piece of advice, but a lot of people are always asking me like, hey, you know, dating advice. What do I talk about on a date? Blah, blah, blah. Just become as passionate as this dude is about bread, and you'll always have something to talk about. I'm serious. There is something fascinating about just listening to an expert talk about what they're an expert in. Like, this dude is so fucking juiced on bread, and I've never really thought about bread like this, but I am like, yes, tell me about bread, sensei.
And pour lactic acid into the bread to flavor it sour. And so people who are buying sourdough bread from the grocery store, the not real sourdough, are getting misguided. They don't really know whether they like sourdough or not because they're eating something that is called sourdough that is not historically sourdough at all. Sourdough is not a flavor, but rather it's a methodology in making bread.
My name's John. I'm the owner of Proof Bread. We're an artisan bakery that happens right here in my home garage.
I gotta pee real quick.
First brought power in for the original ovens, and we didn't own the house at the time. We're taking this crazy gamble of modifying somebody else's house by adding a bunch of power into the garage, hoping that that would be okay. And it turned out that we were able to negotiate to buy the house a few months later. So it's just things you don't think about when you try to start a garage business. I bought the bakery. I wasn't thinking about when I bought the bakery that I was going to have to be putting in drain lines and stuff a year later into my property.
Baking 1 or 2 loaves of bread at home is as simple as just combining 3 ingredients plus a leavening agent. If you compare that to the bread that most people are used to nowadays coming from the store, you can't find a loaf of bread without 15 ingredients. You should look at a bread label. It should be really short, really simple, and everything should be stuff that you've dealt with before yourself.
First thing that we do when we make bread is just combine flour and water. This process has already been optimized over time, trying to figure out the perfect one. This is our custom blend of flour. And the thing is, we're mixing about 180 pounds of dough right now. The dough is transforming kind of in front of our eyes every couple seconds, so now it really is starting to come together, and you can start to see the beginnings of gluten forming as the dough hook grabs the dough and starts to pull on it and stretch it more and more. I'm not really trying to go much past this stage, so this is about the time where I'm going to cut it, and the auto lease now happens passively. The auto lease helps relax the dough, but also strengthen it before you add a leaven to it. So you'll notice that the
11 what?
11
of what?
Right now, if I grab it, it breaks apart really easy. When we come back in just 20 minutes, you'll be able to stretch it further. By the time it comes out of the bowl, once the leaven and the salt have been added, the dough will already have significant strength, and the auto lease really helps kickstart all of this.
If you go down the bread aisle, you see all these brands and all these choices. Sara Lee, Wonder Bread,
This is a
Bread,
cozy
all
stream
just
right now.
one company. The bread aisle is more of an illusion of choice. You're really buying from one.
Wow, he's talking shit about Dave's Killer Bread.
Now, look at all of that.
He's talking shit about Dave's Killer.
Here, but the strength can't really be taken away now unless I overmix, which is hard to do. A lot of people are constantly worried about overmixing, and all of those people need to calm down because it's really hard to overmix.
Bread gets a bad reputation because we have changed it over time into something that is different from what it was historically.
We also make whole grain sourdough croissants. The flour blend that we're using in these is a blend of Arizona heritage grains, including white Sonora, which has been grown.
Yo, I
here.
bet his bread is so good.
The Spanish introduced it to the natives hundreds of years ago in this.
I bet his bread is
in this
so
region.
good.
By using heritage grains, we're part of a solution where we're not robbing the earth of nutrients in the wheat that we're putting in our bread.
Wheat itself has all of these sort of anti-nutrients in it. Phytates, lectins, gluten itself is tough and hard for our bodies to digest. When it comes to bread production at an industrial level, there just simply isn't the time in order for the wheat to ferment out and neutralize all of those sort of anti-nutrients. And that's the reality of industrial bread, is you can go start to finish in rapid speed. When we change the fermentation to sourdough, we change from a 2-hour process to something that actually takes more than a day.
Sourdough bread that's been long fermented is lower on the glycemic index. It's just generally easier for our bodies to take in.
That dough looks
a lot of
so
people that
fluffy.
have trouble with bread, where when they eat bread they feel bloated, they don't feel all that well. Those same people can eat sourdough bread often with no consequence. And so we get this as just a regular thing amongst our customers. They discover our bread at a farmer's market and just experience so much joy that they can eat bread again.
The mixture of flour and water over time creates that fermentation effect. So if you put flour and water in the right temperature, and you will eventually get a sourdough starter if you keep feeding it and making it more robust over time.
I dig his bread in so easily.
Of microorganisms that have the ability to leaven dough on the fly for you every single day. Our sourdough starter's name,
Thank you for those bits.
and she's based here in Mesa, Arizona.
She's in the refrigerator cooling down
Harriet?
so as to preserve this sort of peak level of fermentation. When she was fed, the level that she was at was where this tape line is, and so this is growth that happened overnight. Meanwhile, what's really happening, it's not about the volumetric rise so much as it's about the cell populations of the lactobacillus and the wild yeast multiplying. As the sourdough starter rises and becomes more bubbly, as the smell is right, and you can just, working with it daily, know that it's the right time for it to go in the bowl, we try to trap it at that level by cooling it down.
What?
As it's hitting that level.
What the fuck?
This is sort of an investment in
Trap it?
that's why Harriet has a name.
There is a fair amount to know about managing a sourdough starter. You have to know when to feed it. You have to know when to mix with it when it's peak maturity. And you have to have the discipline to continually care for it, even when you don't feel like it on a particular day. So that makes it challenging to keep a sourdough starter just purely from that standpoint.
We're dealing with a living product in our loaves of bread, and it is completely alive, chock full of microorganisms, all the way until it hits a terminal temperature in the oven, which is 135 degrees for yeast. So the bread really is alive that entire 30-hour process.
Those edges that lift up into the ear singe a little, a little charred.
Hillary Clinton's emails. Thank you for that big old bitty juicer. Feels good, man. Thank you.
Really excellent flavor in bread. Anything that isn't quite this dark loses its crust, loses the caramelization, loses a lot of flavor. I understand not everybody is for crust, and there is bread for that. There's croissants for that. There's anything soft for that.
I like crust.
You won't even realize that you're eating sourdough products.
Oh, the soundtrack.
We don't label everything
Oh.
sourdough, but we're not shying away from the fact that everything actually is sourdough.
This is a sourdough croissant, so it doesn't have any.
Oh my.
Really gently, so you can see the structure of the pastry. You can see the chocolate honeycomb separation of all the layers.
Fucking show me that structure.
Pastry has is flour, water, sourdough starter, butter, some sugar, and salt. Let's go for a bite. Turned out really nice. I do think that there are people, though, that would trade local whole grain flour for white flour in their bread just so that they can have an open crumb structure. And I think that's the point at which you have made a decision more for your own pleasure as a baker than for the resulting bread that we have to remember is a form of nutrition.
Water does play a really significant role in dough. The more water we create in dough, the more dough mass, actually the more ionic activity in that dough.
Bro, this dude is a
Sort of
bread
helps
Jedi.
in its own way. It has a scientific process. There's a reason that dough production has taken on more water as a whole over time. But I'd like to caution the home
A
baker
bread eye?
too obsessed over the size of the holes in the artisan loaves that they're creating and refocus to the quality of the flour that's being used. That should be a much bigger discussion that doesn't happen. Are you buying flour from your local mill? Do you have a local mill where you are?
A local
Think about if there's a
mill?
stone mill nearby.
Can get a little precarious because these flour bags,
I haven't even thought about that.
you wouldn't think there'd be so much involved with just bringing flour in, but when you're working at these levels, it becomes a challenge. When it comes to the business side of things, frequency in ordering can mean whether you have the money to pay the bill, because these are not cheap orders. You know, we're talking about highly premium flour that comes at a premium price point. We have to buy a lot of it to be able to negotiate a decent price point and have margin. But if we buy too much of it, we lose cash flow too quickly. That has to go to some other.
This dude could have worked for NASA, dude.
So
I love my man's passion, but his brain was wasted on bread, bro.
I guess it's one of those things that you should have been paying attention to in business school, but it's so boring and irrelevant in school that it's better just to sometimes learn as you go.
We work with our mill, who then in turn works with the growers that are growing.
Not wasted, but
To
this dude
the
is
crop
big
year over
smart.
year, but we do so while also factoring other considerations other than what the baker wants. So we also have to be influencing the soil positively and doing all these things. By working in smaller supply chains, there's just better overall control from seed all the way to plate. And over time, we can improve the quality of our agriculture, improve the quality of our soil.
You know, when we first started a few years ago, my role was just purely in the bakery all the time and just learning how to bake. I'm almost embarrassed to walk in through here. This is still our construction yard. So 2 months ago, what was back here was just a pile of construction waste. We've worked a lot inside the confines of the building. We've learned a lot there, but I think the next phase for us is to grow food that then ends up in the bakery.
So we don't have the space on this property to produce wheat. We don't have the space to produce all these like major staple crops, you know, sugarcane, whatnot. We do have plenty of space for tomatoes, produce, and all of that. We could easily feed our family. We can feed our bakery, which means we can feed all of our customers with all the specials that we produce through just the third of an acre that we have here. It's plenty of space.
If you go into any of our local grocery stores right now, I would think you should find mulberries. Will you find any mulberries in the local grocery stores right now? No.
What the fuck is a mulberry?
Part of the problem is they age pretty quickly and mold really quick. So they're really meant to be eaten right away or preserved. Well, our
It's like a
grocery stores
blackberry?
are in the business of preserving food. Instead, they're more in the business of throwing it away, often. So there's just no way that a mulberry can make it from the tree to the grocery store to the person in time before it spoils or becomes jam. yet this tree, this one tree, will give hundreds of pounds of fruit every year. They're abundant, they grow super fast. One thing that I've been learning about plants lately is really they are just like pets. They don't just take water, they have to be fed. We have the start of a worm bin going right now, and those red wiggler worms that I put in there are creating vermicompost, which will
What's up, Garrett?
hopefully trees all around the property. There it goes. I swear that plants seem to understand when their environment's not well suited for them, and then they don't do well. You have to be able to read what the plant needs next. Really, everything about this tree in its initial time here is
cool. Thank you, Sticky Lawn Dart,
strength.
for the 16 months, my God.
My goal is for this thing to produce a lot of fruit reliably in future years. So right now, the most important thing is to just get it established in the soil.
And I think that when people bake bread at home, they get a sense of fulfillment that comes from understanding this process that's difficult, that's likely resulting in their immediate failure at what they're trying to do, but something about the food aspect, something about the tactile aspect of doing something in your hands brings people back to try again. And then through that process of discovering this journey of bread making, you rediscover that this is a process of human life that has been around, that we have chosen to trade out for the convenience of going to the grocery store. Whenever something is too easy, something else is traded off that process.
This one has now been sitting for a couple of hours, so it's had a chance to cool, and you can hear that flakiness to the crust. I'm gonna cut it, and you're going to get a crumb shot. We can sort of analyze the crumb to
Crumb shot?
get all.
Do not crumb. Do not crumb.
Here is the crumb of my loaf. What I'm looking at is the fermentation itself. So now I can actually visually see all the fermentation sites. And what I'm noticing is a little bit of irregularity, which is what I want. And that happens through the stretching and folding. But I'm noticing a fairly consistent fermentation that's happening throughout the loaf. A lot of crumbs, as people are learning to bake bread, will burst at the top. So you're gonna get a huge open set of cavities towards the top, and you're gonna get density up at the bottom. That's what is known as a fool's crumb. If I...
A fool's crumb?
This way, perpendicular to...
Fool's crumb.
The ear.
All of you who crumbed too fast, you're fools.
I'm going to get a pretty nice uniform.
We call this premature crumb.
Slice of bread that's still suitable for a sandwich if that's how I want to use it. Keep in mind that this bread is not by design sandwich bread. So it's not going to be the exact same shape as the square bread that you find at the store, but still a really nice slice. This would make a mean sandwich.
Yeah.
The
Okay.
first takeaway is you're going to be trying over and over again, and there's going to be this trial and error process. The thing that's encouraging is, though, that your worst result is probably way better than the bread that you're buying at the store.
A lot of people think that bakers are worried about sharing their formulas and think that by sharing their formulas, bakers are giving all their secrets away. The secret is in the willingness to wake up every single morning at 4:30 and get this thing rolling.
Yeah.
The secret is in the willingness every single night at 10 p.m. to feed Harriet, whether I like it or not, whether I'm tired or not.
Holy fuck, I can't stop crumbing. Jesus, it just won't stop. Ugh, I can't stop crumbing.
Okay, dude. Do not crumb. Do not crumb.
The secret is in every single day working on getting better. My equipment was not always the way it is today, and my process was not exactly what it is today when I had different tools. So there's the laminated croissants.
wow, that's for
you can
cool.
just see how nice all those layers are in there. 81
No
layers.
worries at all. Thank you. Lutz, 1598. Thank you.
Dough, butter, dough, butter.
I really hope that more people venture out of their homes and deciding to look at the farmer's market from a different lens. Take off the grocery store lens.
Chat, you are down bad. Within the last 2 seconds, I saw someone saying,
Alerts
I'm
1598 gifted a tier 1.
I'm becoming a crumb slut. And then someone else said, Brussy. Y'all are down bad. Y'all are this is out of hand.
Price that you have, you're buying to gain a relationship with the producer of that food. You might end up paying $1 or $2, whatever more per pound for that produce or for that bread. But that person who's selling you that food is going to start to recognize you. You're going to start to build this interesting
Crumb Slut.
Your herd.
Bro, I need to open a bakery called Crumb Slut. That name is intense, dude. Crumb Slut.
Your wants and desires are appreciated by the person who's producing the food behind the scenes. In fact, we're going to probably obsess over the feedback you give us. And the thing is that industrial food producer does not care about you.
There's an egg slut already, I know, but crumb slut is so much more graphic than egg slut. Egg slut is like, yeah, I love eggs. Crumb slut is like a clear reference to cum slut. And it is dirty, nasty shit.
They don't care about me. They just care about the bread or whatever it is they're producing moving off the shelves fast enough at the grocery store. You can sort of make a huge impact in your local food economy when you choose to enable people to grow and produce food locally.
Dude, these are so well made. You guys want to watch one more? I kind of want to watch one more. All right, we got... Oh, there's a beer one. There's a beer one and a pot one. I want to watch the beer one.
Wow, that's for...
I want to watch the beer one.
Mommy.
If there's a cheese one, I'm dead. Oh my God, it's not beer, it's mead. It's fucking mead, bro. Look at the first shot. Honey, it's mead. Oh, we're in.
We make something that no one knows about, and it's really expensive to make it and to sell it. Mead is the most delicious beverage that you've probably never tried.
Oh my daddy, that's a lot of honey. Listen, you guys, I don't know if you guys know this, but
cool.
My family...
Gifted a tier 1 sub to only_crayons.
Thank you so much for that. My family makes and sells honey. So I know my honey, that's a lot of honey, and that's good honey.
Honey mixing in there with the water. No better way to drink than get to the source right here.
I'm so excited about tasting.
You know, all your friends and family will say, you know, so many, 90% of small businesses fail and all of that. Well, now looking back, I'm like, well, no kidding. It takes a lot to pull this off. Oh, wow. It's not beer. It's not.
How can you tell it's good? Usually the color. Like the honey that you buy is usually like really yellow because they put a lot of like syrup and like sugar and shit in it. Good, like real organic honey is like amber. It's dark. It's super, super dark. Also, it's a lot thicker.
It's not cider, it's its own category of beverage. We have a warehouse in Phoenix, we have a warehouse in Sweden. We are sending mead all over the...
Are you able to tell us about your family's company? For sure.
So basically right now we're just going to be recirculating this water while we pump in honey so it mixes all together. It's all homogenized. For the recipe, it's basically like...
Isn't it like most supermarket honeys are not technically honey at all? Sort of. They're basically like so watered down that the percentage of like honey that is actually in them is like shockingly low. Like the the bear, like the bear honey that everybody buys, has a shockingly low amount of like honey that's actually in it. The rest is like syrup and shit like that.
Like 2 parts water to 1 part honey.
All right. Let me start this big guy up. This is our honey pump. And this guy does all the heavy lifting.
Bro, this looks exactly like my cousin's bottling facility. It's so trippy.
So you can see the honey going through here. It's gonna be going through this hose over into the 3-way valve over there. And that 3-way valve is also pushing water through as the honey goes through. So it's mixing it in line as well as in the tank while it's circulating. So if we just had, put in a bunch of honey at the bottom of it, it will still ferment. It's gonna eat up that sugars, but it's gonna be way too high of concentration of sugars at the bottom for a healthy fermentation.
Dude, their symbol is fucking sick.
So you want to really get it to that target gravity.
Gravity is a fancy term for the sugar content, basically. With the recipe that we have designed for this, it's designed to ferment to about 13.5% alcohol. To get to that, we have
It's a wolf with a snake as a tongue.
Oh yeah.
That is metal as hell.
start at a specific sugar content, a specific gravity.
Did your cousin ever try to make mead? No, I know the one thing that he might end up doing is making CBD honey. He wants to make CBD infused honey at some point, but I don't think he's started working on that yet.
You can see the honey mixing in with the must right here. It's the winemaker's term for just like basically the bare sugar water is our must.
Mead is the world's oldest fermented beverage. And all of our ancestors, no matter where you're from, whether it's Europe, Africa, even Mesoamerica, our ancestors were all enjoying mead. Honey was really one of the easiest sugars to get because nature is making this beautiful source of honey.
So this
Bro, someone said make a hot honey. I'm gonna keep it $1.50. Hot honey on a pepperoni pizza is one of the most delicious things on the planet. If you've never had hot honey on a pepperoni pizza, it is so fucking good. It is so over the top delicious.
A lot of honey that you get at the store is probably rice syrup from China.
Yeah, dude. See, half of you are like, what? A quarter of you are like, gross. And then the quarter of you that have had it are like, fuck yes. It really is. If you've never had it, it's out of control.
Can't really tell the difference by tasting it. It's a pretty good imitation, but fermenting it is very different. If you're a consumer buying honey at the store, you wouldn't know by tasting it or by looking at it that it was not real honey.
Boom. All right, so he's restating a lot of the stuff I said.
Buying local, like the more locally sourced you can find the honey, the better.
Whether you're cooking, you're making beer, you're making wine, the ingredients are really what make the product. Fermentation is very important, but the quality of your ingredients and where you source them from are almost as important as the work that goes into it.
Different honeys are just like different grains, different hops, different varietals of wine grapes. So when you take Arizona wildflower honey,
I gotta pee.
or Arizona mesquite honey, or a honey that was extracted from a hive in the end of the summer that almost cooked and turned dark brown, all of those different honeys are gonna wind up tasting different, not just as honey, but after you ferment them in a mead. The bees actually will put that honey into the honeycomb in the hive, and they have to dry out the moisture content to be below about 18%, and that will be stable. So when we talk about stability in alcohol, it means that it won't ferment. So they remove so much moisture from the nectar that honey is something that is stable and will not ferment inside the hive. If they didn't do that, the bees would be making mead themselves. And there are cases in nature where a beehive in the crux of a tree will become swamped from a big rainstorm, and then that'll actually start with some just ambient heat, dissolve some of that honey, and mead can happen spontaneously in nature. People knew that there was something magic going on because there was always going to be this resident yeast culture sitting around in those vessels that were creating alcohol. And so people all around the world were making mead.
I'm going to prepare the yeast, and to do that we need a specific water temperature, and so this is coming out at 105 degrees, which is exactly what we need. Sure, like if you're making bread, you normally rise the yeast in in a water that was about this temperature. All the water in the building is filtered. We've got a very large charcoal filter that filters everything as the water comes into the building. So even the water in the toilet is filtered. All right, so we've got our 2.5 gallons. And then I need 675 grams of these nutrients. It's an aperitif, if you will, for the yeast, so that it can start chowing down on the honey we're about to give it. Quite simply, yeast eats sugar, creates alcohol, and that's the basis of all fermentation. This here is it's dry yeast, billions and billions and billions of cells. This is going to rehydrate and get all nice and hungry.
We get to use techniques from the...
If I get honey from my hives next year, I'm sending you some dead ass. Hell yeah, thank you.
That are truly unique and like you've never had before.
So gravity is actually a measurement of density. Like the gravity of water is like 1.000.
Ludwig cheer.
So
That's a cutie moat.
Scale of like water to thick water. So what I'm looking for here is, well, this is like 1.125. For our purposes, the density is indicative of the sugar content. It can be used for other things as well. Like rocket fuel is also measured by gravity.
You just bought Michigan Beco? Hell yeah. You'll love it.
And so with a recipe like this that we've made many, many times, we want to make sure that it's consistent, and this will become important as we ferment. As this ferments, the gravity will get lower as the yeast consumes the sugar. And so if we take a measurement in a few days, this will drop down and down and down until it's to the point where we want to stop the fermentation, basically.
In this process of
fascinating,
there's a lot of science that goes into what we do, and we're looking at the pH and the gravities and the temperatures and all of these different factors that go into having a happy, healthy fermentation, creating the best product we can. Well, then there's the artistic side, and that's what the barrel program here really represents. The different qualities that we're going to get from the different woods, the different barrels, the different way that they were all treated, really put in flavor to what we're doing that is sort of magical in the way that we don't know exactly when this is going to be ready to drink, and it's going to be different tomorrow, just a little, than it is today, and it'll definitely be different in 6 months than it is today. When you cook or toast the wood, the lignin that makes up wood, you can chemically change lignin to vanillin, and vanillin is the exact same flavor that you get from a vanilla bean or that you have in vanilla ice cream. So you can get flavors like vanilla and even coconut and nutmeg from oak. There are so many factors that can be considered when it comes to barrel aging. This is actually a ruby port barrel from Portugal that we imported. So, gonna get this just right.
No.
Now we're taking a sample of some beautiful raspberry mead that's aging in a port barrel. That is something.
This dude gets wasted, and I love it.
The first thing we want to do is evaluate the appearance and the aroma. And it is just this beautiful garnet red color, so that's spot on. And it's just everything honey and raspberry busting out of that nose.
Bussin'.
Oh, wow. Wow, this is just one of the best things that we've ever made. Even though mead, at some point in time, people developed ways to make wine and beer and developed distilling, and mead had a lot of competition. Mead was never an inexpensive product because the primary fermentable ingredient that defines the category is honey. Honey is the most expensive, commonly used fermentable ingredient in alcohol today. The good news is that we've been able to transition that great challenge into one of our greatest assets, and that's that we get to define an industry. We get to define what is mead to everyone that comes into our tasting room. A traditional mead is when you take honey and water and yeast.
Oh my God, look at that table. Are you fucking kidding? A flatbed, the big boy charcuterie, and enough mead to get you fucking blind drunk. I'm all the way in. I am all the way in. I want to go. I want to do this.
Catalyst to start the fermentation, and that's really it. We try and source the very best international ingredients from all over the world, but we pair those with what we feel is the best honey in the world, which is Arizona honey. Don't just drink one mead and think that's what it's all like. I mean, imagine if you only had a Bud Light and you thought that's what all beer was, and you're like missing the
Thank you, Blink.
Barrel-aged stouts and double IPAs and these crazy cool flavors that are out there. If you have the opportunity, go somewhere that's offering. Go to a meadery. Look them up. See where they're at. And
a meadery?
It's because some are going to be just like a white wine. Some may taste like a beer.
Platter.
The tradition of the honeymoon was across many different cultures, especially when there were arranged marriages and like the husband and wife didn't know each other. And so the tradition is that you would give a newlywed couple a cycle of the moon or a month's supply of mead, and that was your honeymoon. And so that would help break down barriers and get the guy and gal to
honeymoon. Mead made from honey. What? Dude, my mind!
Know each other and then start a family, and that's where the story of mead being the world's original aphrodisiac comes from. Mead is amazing, and I use that word on purpose because the word amazing, like how many times have you said that? But you don't know what it means. So the etymology of the term is based on this ancient wooden bowl that you would drink mead out of called a mazer. And if something is amazing, it's as good as being drunk on mead.
You better fuck right. Are we learning, chat? What the fuck is happening here? Are we learning shit? What? How did this become an educational stream? What the fuck just happened? A mazer? A bowl of mead? A honeymoon? I'm transcending.
It's like caramel covered raspberries and a hint of alcohol, and the port's shining through. That's just beautiful. The creativity.
I love how my man pulled out a taste of his own drink, didn't give any to the crew or the cameraman, drank the whole glass. He knows how it tastes. He doesn't give a shit.
Yeah, I'm all tuned.
What's up, Mackenzie? We're learning right now, Raiders. I don't even know how to deal with this, Mackenzie. I'm fucking learning right now, bro. My brain is getting wrinkly as hell. We learned something. Ready, Raiders? Listen to this. A honeymoon is called a honeymoon because you would give the married couple a month's supply of mead, which is made with honey. Back to the fact that this dude literally poured a sample for the crew and just drank the whole thing. That's alpha. That's holding frame. He's like, oh, yeah, let me get you some of my fucking mead, and it's good. You should really have some.
And the potential to make something really unique in the mead world rivals or best anything else out there that I've ever had. So that's why I think mead is amazing, and you should try it.
Okay, this dude's swirl game is ludicrous, dude. Okay, dude, wait a minute. Hold on, man. No living human actually holds a glass like this. Stop. This is a flex. You gotta be joking me. No living human actually swirls like this. You gotta... That is the most ludicrous swirl game I've ever seen in my life. Holy shit. All right, we got to watch another now, bro. I'm learning. All right, everybody's going to say, let's watch the weed one. All right, we're watching the weed one, everybody.
Sat down with Steven and tried his product. I was like, no way you grew this. No way.
He got high. My man tried it and he got high as giraffe pussy.
There's a science to cannabis, but there's also an art.
That's that cryptochronolite
Cannabis.
This is the best weed I've ever smoked in my life.
I love how every one of these videos has been an expert. And then there's literally like the good neighbor shit. The dude like, bro, this weed is like the dopest dope I ever smoked, bro.
This is the best weed I've ever smoked in my life.
It definitely burns when you get trichomes in the eyes.
If you put 20 growers in one room, they'll tell you 20 different ways on how to grow the plant.
Definitely some of the best quality I've ever grown.
What makes Steven so special is his love for the plant.
That's a whole plant hanger right there.
Oh my God, that's some dank bud right there. That is some crystallized dank bud right there.
Essentially, if you can grow tomatoes, you can grow cannabis. My name is Steven. I'm a caregiver, and I cultivate cannabis for patients. So as a caregiver, we're basically just growing for the patients. It's going straight from my hands to the patient's hands. It's kind of like a farm to table concept. It's basically being chopped off the plant, dried, put right into a jar, cured up.
What about a Costco dog? Crushed up Doritos.
It over to you, the patient.
Only one that plays.
This I ended up getting one seed out of a outdoor pound I got from a friend. And man, it turned into this beautiful, pure kush right here. Everybody in public, you know, you see a weed leaf, you see a cannabis plant, it's on signs, it's on pictures, where we're actually growing the plant for the buds, not for the leaves. You really don't want leaves, you want a bunch of big old plumpy, juicy buds.
When I first sat down with Steven and tried his product, I was like, no way you grew this. No way. He was like, yeah, I did, bro. And I was like, well, can you teach me how to do this? Because this is the best weed I've ever smoked in my life. And at first he was hesitant, and then he...
Dude, I like how the stoner repeated himself. My man is literally a character of himself. He literally repeated himself. No way did you grow this. This is the dopest weed I've ever smoked in my life. Did you grow this? This is the dopest weed I've ever smoked in my life.
Finally was like, 2 weeks later, he was like, yeah, let's do this.
So instead of actually using my fingers.
Yo, wait. What is this soundtrack, bro? Real trap shit.
Earl Cup, baby, Phantom Cookies, 2021.
Steven's methodologies are award-winning. He's won a Jack Rare Cup. He's won 4 Earl Cups. The Earl Cup sends the flower to patients. The patients try it. They write down the number, and then the results come in. So that just proves right then and there that he's doing something right.
I'm ballsy. I don't take no shit from anyone.
I'm gonna pee real quick.
In the vegetative setup, checking for plant growth, root development, making sure they're photosynthesizing, making sure our VPD's driving growth, they're transpiring. We have 2 different types of mediums in here. We have cocoa up here to my right. And down here we have rock wool. There's different types of mediums you can use as a grower, from rock wool, cocoa, and soil to hydroponic clay pellets. Basically, rock wool is like limestone that has been spun kind of in a way like cotton candy, like a rock fabric basically, that they made into a grow medium. I prefer as a grower to do cocoa just because it's kind of the medium between rock wool and soil. You get aggressive growth like rock wool gives you, but you get the really tasty benefits that soil give you. From my perspective, the biggest problem in the cannabis industry, which really impacts me as a caregiver in Arizona, is that it's very hard for me to operate and to get my own facility, to get my own license. There's only so many licenses to go around, and they're not creating any more. We're actually growing inside the master bedroom of a house. This is a closet. We're working out of like a desk right now, kind of like a little office area. To lease a license basically can cost upwards of $1 million a year. We're using photography lights as our fridge and our cloning lights, but it's working. As a caregiver, I'm not allowed to accept any money for the product that I give to a patient. We're actually cooling the room with a coil.
When did this turn into a rave?
Inside a box that we run chilled water through, and we run air through that with a can fan.
You know, to this day, people are still using burner phones.
To this day.
They're scared to like come out publicly.
We're maxed out on the space that the house has to provide. I'm kind of pigeonholed between being a caregiver and leasing a license from somebody else. I can never actually own my own license at this point. Sometimes you just gotta use what you got, whatever resources you have. Think outside of the box a little bit, and if you put your heart into it, you're gonna get out what you put in. This thing's a beast right here.
Damn.
My routine as a caregiver is coming in my grow rooms first off, looking at the plants, seeing how healthy they look, seeing how they responded to what I did the previous day. Take for example, if you watered and changed the variables such as added in a fertilizer supplement for safe flowering, the next day you would want to come in here, look around at your plants, you know, inspect the health of them, see if they liked that supplement or didn't like it, and then kind of respond to that current day to either fix the problem, keep going with what you're going with because the plants are giving you a good look out of it, or switch it up and change it. There's a science to cannabis, but there's also an art to cannabis. You gotta find that happy medium of where the know-how and the experience kind of meet, the book smarts, but plus the art side of it. You really gotta feel the plants out. It's definitely science and art meet in the middle. To grow a good, healthy, clean cannabis plant, you have to be very preventative instead of reactive. You have to be proactive. We're trying to find a good picture candidates to select. Nice. Nice. So that's Phantom Cookies right there. That's gonna make a beautiful photography picture.
What I'm gonna do is take this into my photo room and just clamp it to something where it'll stabilize this whole plant. And then I can take about 100 photos and then stack them together, and hopefully it looks like how we're looking at it right now.
Dude, the photography, like the camera direction in this is so crazy. Oh my God, this is gonna piss me off. He had soft focus in like 3 of those photos.
So right now what I'm measuring is the pH. I want that to be right around 6.4, and right now it's reading at about...
He was stacking them? Oh, okay.
7. So what I'm gonna do is take this pH down and add a little bit.
Basically the pH and the nitrogen and, sorry, got really stoned before I did this.
Dude, this one is so good.
pH is base. Oh crap. pH is super important when you're growing a plant, because if you're growing a flowering plant and you're hitting the lower spectrum of the pH, the plant's not going to be able to process the flowering type of plant food. And when you're in veg and you're trying to hit at 5.5, it uses the nitrogen how it's supposed to. And when you're in flowering hitting at 6.2, it uses more of the potassium and phosphorus how it's supposed to.
So the reason why we set this up in my house, Steven connected me with the Arizona Health Department. They looked up my address and they were like, you can become a caregiver at your location. I don't think too many people know that, where if your patient lives 25 miles away from a dispensary, they could sign over their growing rights to you and you could grow on their behalf. I have 5 cards, which equals 60 plants, and Steven also has 5 cards, which equals 60. That allows us to grow up to 120 plants.
This shit is fascinating.
Here we are in the early flowering room. We have 3 different types of lights, 3 different generations. The single-ended lights here are the earlier generation of grow lights. Then they came out with these double-ended HIDs, which are a little more energy efficient. They produce a little bit of UV light. Then most recently they came out with these LED lights, which are a new modern type of light that's way more energy efficient. And they also added in a little bit of UV spectrum. When ultraviolet hits the plant, it can produce orange, kind of like a carrot would, and that's because it has beta carotene in it, just as a carrot does. The blues, the purples, the reds that cannabis produces is also a form of sunscreen. The plant's basically producing sunscreen to protect itself in the form of awesome colors and trichome production and terpenes. So in nature, terpenes play a very important role. They're the essential oils of the plant world. Terpenes are very underplayed, underestimated. It's like an underdog on the plant. To me, if you have a plant that has like a 30% THC and a 1% terpene level, and you have a plant that has, say, a 20% THC but a 5% terpene level, that plant that actually has the lower THC.
Dude, please, someone get this man a glass of water. Please, someone get this man a glass of water, for fuck's sake.
Our terpene level is actually going to give you more medical effects than the plant that has a higher THC level. A trichome is basically a cell that holds in all the cannabinoids. It's where you can find the terpenes.
Can you link this? Yeah, I'll link this.
And the THC, the CBD, all that stuff is housed within the top of the trichome, the mushroom-looking head.
Damn, bro.
Just as there's different types of tomatoes as in Roma and beefsteaks, there's different types of cannabis plants as in indica, sativa, kush, and haze. And no matter what people say, if it's a sativa or if it's an indica, it's the terpenes through the lab charts at the end of the day that either give you the sleepiness, the couch lock for indica, or the energetic creativeness of a sativa. Now these days, a lot of people think everything's a hybrid and that there's no such thing as indica or sativa anymore, but that's not true. There's still land races out there. Land race is a type of cannabis plant that is native species to the planet. And there's different ones all over the world, from sativas to indicas to, say, a Mekong High type of a plant in overseas versus an Afghanica plant from the Hindu Kush Mountains. So my mom has Parkinson's disease, and different terpenes affect her in different ways. At one point they could make her not so shaky and not so trembly, but the terpene levels just tweaked barely. It could actually make her trembly or more shaky. So for me, coming out of CPS custody, which is Child Protective Services custody, I didn't really have too much options in life. I never had a father figure to teach me a craft or a trade of sorts. So when cannabis came into my life and I realized how important it was to me, it made me start to realize that there was possibly a big future in it. Cannabis has really helped me in my life to get over some really hard times and tribulations that I've gone through. I was in CPS custody growing up, and I was in CPS custody until I was a young adult of the age of 21. So for me, cannabis has always been there to kind of help get me through the hard times. Cannabis kind of helps put a new perspective on life for me, to where I'm not dwelling on the past or where I came from. It kind of helps me focus more on the present and in the now, and gets me looking toward the future and where I'm going.
Now my man is making that weed money, baby. Let's go. All right, people wanted me to share that video. I hear you. I'm sharing it. There you go. Boom.